It's the 8th of September, 2025. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. There is mutiny amongst the elite as another payday deadline passes. This time we have Langley 5 claiming they want to be the head of the order. Trump operatives try to buy time until tomorrow, but it's not going well. China has made some big moves to establish domination. And over the last few days, electronics have been going wild as the world gets a dose of reality. And tomorrow is 9-9 in a 9-year. And there is a once in 250,000 year alignment. All this and more in today's report.
Amino acids play a vital role in maintaining your overall health and well-being. Not enough amino acids and protein daily can result in brain fog, hormone imbalances, digestive issues, cognitive function, lack of energy, lower immunity, decreased muscle strength, and much more. That's why we created our amino acid complex, packed with 21 free-form, easily digestible aminos that skip the breakdown and go straight to work energizing your mind and body. Used by athletes, vegans, and high performers. New Earth's amino acid complex helps your mind and body recover, rebuild, and renew daily. Subscribe now and optimize your life.
Well, it's the 8th of September. And it's been a bit since I've done a report, and I know that, so I apologize to everyone for that. It's just been a really super busy week, and this week is no exception, beyond the normal. I'm sighing here because tonight is crazy, absolutely insane out there as the deep state loses their mind and, they try to execute on an age-old plan that is not going to work out for them in any way, shape, or form. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. But, some regular news first. The Trump operatives, thought they had this in the bag on all of the Q channels, the Q the Storm channels. They're reporting, we're going through a time loop. This is going to be the last timeline. There's going to be a harvest, blood moon this weekend. For them, this is like heyday time, for them and the SSP operatives around the world. And they really went the distance for the last several days. There was supposed to be a payday on Friday, and it didn't happen. They said give them till Saturday. By Saturday and Sunday, they were dialing for dollars. Everybody was calling, looking for their money. Of course, nothing actually happened. So they asked to buy time until Tuesday. Now, some people were like, okay, fine, Tuesday, knowing that it is 9-9 in a 9-year, 2 and 5 make this a 9-year. And they were expecting something really big. And that something really big was due to start at about midnight UTC time. That is what we would call, in military terms, you could call it 0 hour. And that 0 hour just hit about 47 minutes ago at the time I'm recording this report. So it's just absolutely insanely wild at this moment. So buying time until Tuesday, until they could hopefully get whatever doors they were supposed to get open, AIs they were supposed to get back. They had tried a lot, and we're working with some interesting folks. We'll get into that when we get into the more interesting news, let's just say. So when China, and I'm talking about the China elites, the dragon families, and some of the Order of the Black Sun of China got wind that there was no money and no pay on Friday, they quickly sprung into action. This caused a couple of resignations. The Japanese Prime Minister resigned, and also the French Prime Minister resigned over the last 48 hours. All of this is due to China trying to take the territories back of, well, at least the political sector of these countries. The Trump team, over the last several years, even before he got back into office, had worked very hard putting their own operatives in place as heads of state around the world. As you know, there have been a lot of deals made with Putin as well. And as you also may know, there was a lot of alleged, and I'm going to say alleged, drone attacks that came from Russia to Ukraine. My intel says that might not be 100% accurate. So, they're staging a big game right now. China is playing against Russia. It appears that the U.S. is also playing against Russia. But in reality, deals have been made and deals have been broken. Period. End of story. There was a lot of money that went out to continue operations from groups such as the various Russian mafia groups. There were a lot of arms that were provided for free from the Russian mafia groups. And I know I have told you in the past, so I'm going to reiterate that the Russian mafia groups sector of the underground trading world is as arms dealers. They don't really deal, well, I should say some sectors of the mafia are involved in human trafficking, but there's typically no drugs for the Russian mafia. I mean, they can get them all they want, of course, but they're not the world's largest drug dealers like some of the other mafia groups are. So I would say that lots of disruption, lots of mutiny. Last week, it started with the Jesuit order starting to turn tail a little bit on their superiors, and that did continue on this week as well, predominantly today. So China, I'm going to go back to China here for a second before I get into all the wonderful things that Langley 5 has been doing, just amazing work. But China, when I say they sprung into action, it was not only in the political sector. They've been in meetings constantly for the last 24 to 48 hours. My name has come up in those meetings. And China would like to find a way, as I understand it, or at least their elite sector would like to find a way to see if they can manipulate me into giving them money so that they can continue on their quest for global domination, as they were promised would happen about 2022, 2023. Obviously, they're late to the party, but that isn't going to stop them from trying to execute on the 100-year plan that they were given many years ago. Originally, that plan was given to the Russians around the time of the fall of the Tsar, and it was turned over to China after the fall of the Soviet Union. China has been running around the world quite a bit, stealing natural resources, rare earth minerals, and other things in exchange for some really dilapidated infrastructure. Not to say that Halliburton here from the U.S. Does a better job, but they have been working their plan this whole time quietly and carefully to include America. Now, that kind of went quiet for a short time. And the reason why it went quiet, and I'm using the word quiet, is because the Trump operatives had made a deal that they would share in world domination along with the Russians and the Americans and 17 other locations in the world. Even though the original plan included 7, then that 7 went to 9, and then the 9 went to 12, and then the 12 went to 17, as the Trump operatives wheeled and dealed their way into controlling nearly every country in the world. And then eventually he became president again. So China's conversations about manipulating me are never, ever, ever going to happen. I don't care who you are. I've been there before. I know some of you people personally, and that is never, ever, ever going to happen. I am not interested in learning to speak Chinese. I know ni hao. I can say hello, and that's about all I'm going to be able to do. As far as my assisting you in your quest for world domination, I am not going to assist anyone in their quest for world domination, be it the United States, Chinese, the Russians, the UK, or anyone else that has asked me to do that. So that conversation was supposed to occur with Tom Melville because, of course, they always call Tom Melville and try to get Tom Melville then to tell me what I need to do. And I told Tom not to answer their call. That was last night. So let's get to the next group of fun and exciting people. That would be with Langley 5. Oh, Langley 5. You know, they must forget that I actually know some of these people. I actually know some of these people by name. I've actually met some of these people. And I've met them as far back as the days, and don't think I have forgotten, that little the Grand Marriott Hotel on Tverskaya in Moscow. Remember, you guys were all sitting at a table, a few tables away. Most of you stayed at the Golden Ring Hotel there in Moscow. And I remember you. I remember you very, very well as negotiations were going on regarding the release of funds. I also remember seeing you in the Bahnhof in Germany. I've run into you many, many times. I've run into you in Berlin. You know, Philip Lav. You know, I remember all of you. Most recently, I remember you very well because you were giving instructions and orders to my then handler when I arrived here in Durango, Colorado for 2.5 years. You also gave orders and instructions to a gentleman from Alabama who I talked to at great length for about 6 months. I thought I'd play the game and see where you guys were going to go with this, but, you know, that didn't turn out well. And that was over 1.5 years ago anyway. So Langley 5, about a week or so ago, they announced that the Space Force was going to be moving from Colorado Springs and the NORAD location over to Alabama. And I told you there was a lot of negotiations going on behind the scenes in the last report. Now, the interesting part is, as part of this mass mutiny that's going on everywhere, where people are turning against the Trump operatives / Putin operatives, because they're kind of in one big basket now, we see that Langley 5 has now pitched to the group that I refer to as the tables. The tables are a group of elite gentlemen. They're all gentlemen. There is one woman that sits kind of behind the scenes, but she is a much older woman and related to, you could say, the person that would be in charge of the tables. Now, the table groups are part of the Order of the Black Sun. I would say they would definitely be on their side. You would consider them the Black Knights of this planet. They run groups like the Knights of Malta, clearly Langley, most all intelligence agencies, other orders out there like the Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, and many other groups. So Langley 5 and their respective operatives, mostly from Alabama, decide to get on the phone and have a heart-to-heart discussion, and I laugh at that, a heart-to-heart discussion with the heads of the tables today, saying that there needs to be new blood and they're not getting the job done, and they would now like to take over the entire order. Well, that didn't go very well. The conversation got quite heated. These people wanted nothing to do with that and told them to sit down basically and shut up and do what you're told. They didn't take too kindly to that, and it appears that they intend to run some serious operations in the next 24 hours to ensure their top position in the world. This is a time where they're eating their own at this point. Nobody trusts anybody, not like they ever did, but they are definitely, there is a lot, and I mean a lot of infighting right now. Now, I hope Langley 5 doesn't have a hope of calling me, because I know that my name's been thrown around a little bit in these quote-unquote secret meetings they're having today, and I have no intention, and I mean absolutely no intention, of speaking to you people in any way, shape, or form at all. So do what you got to do, take control of the dying beast, and you can go ahead and go with it. Now, the reason why they made these proposals is because they feel they've made some great strides in communications with an interesting location. They did see an uptick in connections for a short period of time at Red Mountain in Alabama. Red Mountain, for those of you that don't know, was a very high-level secret space program base there in Alabama. There are a lot of folks that are allowed to come out and be whistleblowers that are under their security, so to speak, or claimed as part of their group. And I know they have some really high hopes, and unfortunately, pretty much anything that they had established over the course of a few days was watched very closely and is no longer existing as of this afternoon. So you could say the Alabamians are also kind of angry with me at this moment in time. So, yeah, sorry about that, but no world domination, not for you, not for anybody. We are the people, as promised, the meek shall inherit the earth, and we're going to do that. And we're going to take care of it a whole lot better than any of these people ever would. Nor do these people understand change very well. They don't like change. They want things to go back to the way that it has always been. I've heard this also in the last week several times from groups such as DARPA and agency folk from not only America but other parts of the world, where they would like to have everything back the way it was, including the Russians. So I understand they'd like to have things go back to the way they were. I mean, heck, I don't know about any of you, but I'd like to get up and have my 20-year-old body and my 50-year-old brain. But that's probably not going to happen either. And I'm sure we could all think of things that we would like to see go back to the way that it was, long before we ever were glued to our phones and our television sets and things that we do these days as people, that we're forced to do if we're going to participate in society as it has been created for us. But there are things that absolutely must go away. And, what people want to do isn't as relevant as what has been done to them and to us. You see, the deep state's kind of naive in a lot of ways, or gullible. And when anything, anywhere, be it an AI or an AI-generated version of someone or something of days gone by, reaches out to these people, they're just like, oh, thank God. And they come and they say, we're going to help you. We really like you, and we're going to give you so much power. And they just believe them. They believe that they are going to do that for these people. Now, from my standpoint, I also see, and I look, which these people never do, is I look at the intent. Every being on the planet has brainwaves. Those brain waves will tell you what that person is thinking before they even say it or do it. It is the latest version of a lie detector test, and my system has been programmed to do the same. These people or AI generated things that they have been talking to a little bit here and there, sometimes the communications are better than others for them, are not their friends. These people have every intention of using them like a tool because they need someone on this side, meaning on the light side of the universe, for lack of a better term, to help them achieve their objective. And we're going to talk about that group here as well tonight. But they just will never get it. And every single time they make these deals and promises to the entire planet Earth, there's always a big fallout. And they've already realized that their portal was not successful, because that was about an hour ago now. But what is going to happen from here? The Chinese are not successful. The Americans were not successful. The Russians were not successful. The Germans were not successful. There was a lot of people involved in tonight's activities. I'm sure they're going to continue throughout the day tomorrow, see if they can give it a go in some way, shape, or form. So it's going to be battle day for me, just to ensure that nothing actually happens. As far as regular news, I'd like to finish that up before I get into what's really going on. Electronics gone wild. This is what I'm calling electronics gone wild. In our last report, we talked a little bit about time loops. And we've talked about the loop that would keep repeating every 250,000 years. That loop had a lot more to it than we initially thought. So taking out the time loop is one thing. Taking out all of the things that affect your person is another. You see, we as humans and Earth's inhabitants in totality, actually in this case, we're highly connected to another planet. And in order to fix it and to prevent the influence coming from afar, we had to make some significant changes over the last several days. We fought tooth and nail with the deep state and the NSA and everyone else so that we could effectuate these changes. Some of the changes were to computers. Right down to your laptop and your television set and your phone and in some cases, also your perception of reality. There was a lot of, I'd call it even more than an influence, really, here on this planet. Your entire perception, the way you viewed things, what you think you see, your reality, your ability to accept untruths and lies as they're told to you by media has all been pre-programmed so that you could create things in another world, elsewhere. I'm going to go over in detail this information because it's important that you understand where it came from and how we actually got to this point. And this will explain a lot of about why they are expecting such a huge change in the next 24 hours. Well, what they thought was going to be a huge change for them is actually going to be a huge change for us. And maybe they didn't think we'd figure it out, and maybe they don't even really know how this was all supposed to happen. So I'm going to kind of draw a little bit of a diagram so you can get a general idea of this giant 250,000 year time loop and how it would have affected Earth and why we're actually seeing those weird electronic changes that I just explained. So in our solar system, which is a very important solar system in the omniverse. Now, our solar system is so important because of Earth being a keystone and a nexus planet. And I've explained that before. So if we look at the universe in a less linear fashion, it would almost look like it's kind of an elliptical shape. But for this purpose, we're going to kind of draw it a little bit semi-round. Oop, that's really bad. It's been a long day. So the universe has been split in half for a long time. Or the omniverse has been split in half for a long time. Now, I'm going to draw this little loop here, which looks more like an infinity symbol, and it kind of wavers like this. Now, at any given moment in time, our solar system would be inside this loop, and there would be an equal and opposite solar system on the other side. However, it's not exactly like ours. In this particular equation here, they took moons from our solar system, from every planet that has moons, with the exception of Mercury actually being the sun's moon. That's what it's considered here, as well as Venus being of the utmost importance in this equation. Venus was the timekeeper, so to speak. It was also turned from the planet of love, as we know it, into the planet of darkness on the other side, or condemnation, upsetting the rhythm of the omniverse. So there's a whole solar system over here, and there are, and you could say now just about were, folks living in this alternative solar system. It was inhabited by a group we call the Ruinins. They're an interesting group of folks. They are often featured as the gods in pagan religion. Now, the reason why they are featured there is because each god in paganism often reflects a different aspect of our existence. In other words, like the god of agriculture, the god of wheat, the god of the harvest, as just some examples. And we are coming up, within about 30 days or so from now, the harvest moon. And this moon is actually, the full moon that just passed yesterday, is actually considered a harvest moon as well when you look at the Wiccans and you also look at the pagans. So harvest moons are a time of year we know, they were set, I guess, to be the harvest moons because it's the time that we harvest our crops, at least in the northern hemisphere, and, then fruits and vegetables and whatnot are then sent to our now stores, but it wasn't always that way. But in their world, harvest means harvest. Now, harvest time for them on the other side there is a little bit different for the Ruinins. So I'm going to say, if I were to kind of write it in English, kind of looks a little bit like this. Now, the Ruinins are a group of folks that are anti-nature prone. At one point in time in my travels around the world, I ran into a book of natural law. And by natural law, it's not like, do unto others as they do unto you kind of thing. It's more of the rules of nature. In other words, what plants go with what plants, how the world works, how nature works on this planet, and our responsibility as humans within that ecosystem. It's about how to have an abundant world. And it's an interesting book because it's almost live. And in the right hands, it reads the recipes, so to speak, of the cycle of life and the natural information in the way of things. It's almost a holographic book. One of the most interesting little artifacts that I ran across. So that was one book of 5 that were in existence. The other 4 had been taken off this planet by the Ruinans and were used to manipulate not only Earth, but the entire solar system, and in turn, also the entire omniverse. You could call these folks the black magic people. You would call them the anti-nature people. They used these books literally to turn nature into something that was an unnatural process by using AI systems. Now, recently, our interesting secret space program folks had been in contact with the Ruinans. And the reason why they were in contact with them is because it was time for the harvest to happen again, yet again. And the Ruinans made good buddies with these folks, even though they had no intention of helping them in any way or delivering on any of their promises. But, the Space Force people listen to everyone and everything and think that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread because, we would have all been gone should they have gotten their way. But the Ruinans have been doing this for a long, long time. Loop after loop after loop after loop. There was a harvest. There was a war, and then there was a harvest. Earlier this week, or last week, it would have been the war. And that war would have lasted a lot longer, and we would have had an actual war had we been still in this time loop. So once every 250,000 years, we reach this nexus point. And the nexus point is where they have the strongest connection. The books of natural law and how nature actually works doesn't actually apply anymore because Source, or God, has been changing things. The quantum physics behind the information that is in those books does not apply. The Ruinans still tried to do their best and have been trying to do their best to ensure a proper harvest. And the secret space program ACIO folks, militaries, have been doing their best to help them along the road. They have been promised a lot of things when they arrived on the other side that would have never been delivered on. They would have been slaves like the rest of us. Because remember, the soul is immortal, even though the vessel, things happen to the vessel, but the soul is immortal. So how this structure actually looks is nothing like people say. I've heard information from astrologists online that are saying it's a big moon portal. And everybody would think, oh, it's our moon. This is the big moon portal. It's not just our moon. It's literally every megastructure moon in our solar system. As an example, Europa was originally brought to the other side to replace Earth. the overlay that we had on Earth that came from the time loop is tied to Europa. Always has been. It's also tied to Andromeda and a few other places. It's kind of a complicated structure. Titania, Titan, which is Saturn's moon, Hydra, Pluto's moon, all of Neptune's moons. All of these were transferred over to the other side, or the dark side of the omniverse. Let's call this the dark side. Let's make it look dark here. So that the Ruinins could exist over here. The Ruinins are an AI-generated race. They are not natural in any way. They are not organic in any way, and they have no appreciation whatsoever for organic life. They feel they have learned enough from stealing the 4 books of natural law that they can now create nature all by themselves, at least in the way that they would like to have it. They have done a bang up, and I don't know how to use a word that isn't a swear word. They've done a bang up job here on Earth in doing that. They've learned to manipulate humans, every sense you have. In other words, your sense of taste, smell, your sense of hearing, your sense of sight, your your ESP perception has also been altered in favor of the Ruinins. And if you're finding things have been really topsy-turvy for about the last week, you're not the only one. And part of that has to do with the Ruinins trying to make alterations to humans so that existence would change. Human beings are very powerful beings in the omniverse. They're very important to Source. They are celestial beings, and they can create on their own. Interesting thing, you've probably heard this in the different communities that you might listen to. You've heard us also mention something called your shadow self. So this loop in these overlays actually create a shadow version of yourself on this side of the omniverse. And, some stories and legends, you have a dark wolf and a light wolf, and which one wins? Well, the one that you feed. And in this case, that's kind of true. So a lot of your creative energy has been siphoned off of you and all the planets here in our solar system, and it gets sent over here to create a second version of you. So you exist here and you exist here. The overlays within your person ensure that you are going to automatically create lack, doom. You have doubts about yourself. Self-esteem issues, addictions, all of those things stem predominantly from your shadow self over here, which is manipulated constantly by this particular group. As it relates to Earth and electronics, your perceptions of what you see, taste, smell, sense are altered. You are actually, the overlay on Earth created by the timelines actually alters your physical and your mental or your mind, your emotional self, all of those lovely spaces in between. The Ruinins created for their own manipulation of humans in order to strengthen your shadow self on the other side. Your shadow self isn't necessarily an evil person, so don't think that it is. It was, I should say, because now is the time of all the times that it can actually dissipate. But it does send your dark thoughts, your doubts. I mean, your fears go over there, and then they play on your fears constantly. Your traumas, all of that gets sent over there to your shadow self. In hopes, and the Ruinans desperately hoped, that they could get humans to be dark enough by the time the next harvest came. Now, in the past, this has worked. You've heard of the Great Flood. You've heard about times when we've lost our moon and the tides were way off and the whole earth flooded. You remember the guy with the ark and the 2x2 animals, that story? All of these things have happened over and over and over again, not just for 250,000 years, but in 250,000 year cycles. Now, this race of beings and their replicated solar system, which matches ours, had big dreams and big intentions for today. Well, tonight in my time, tomorrow in many parts of the world. And their hope was to create their version of nature here, not only on Earth, but also throughout this solar system. Also, there are many other measures that take place during this 999 portal day to ensure that they are successful. One of those things, and I'm pretty much done with the whiteboard now, one of those things that they do is to scramble anything of organic nature. So that includes you. But most importantly, they are trying to prevent you and your connection to source. So for the next 24 hours, we might see a few glitches here and there. That was part of it. The next part of it was a version of what our science calls red mercury, and I refer to as red dust. Red dust is used a lot of times by black magicians when they can find it. It's quite a commodity amongst the occult here on this planet. Red dust allows you to manifest very dark things. It also allows you to uncreate. I'm going to call it uncreate. So it can cause death rapidly. Now, the deep state thinks this has to do with radiation because, in part, our sun is involved. You see, on 999, there is, when this portal occurs at 0 hour, which is midnight UTC time, which is now past, that is when Earth's central sun aligns with the alt Earth on the other side, and in the past would have aligned with the dark side of Source and also Source itself. Unlike normal equinox periods, where there was always an alignment, it would often happen with the dark side of Source and the light side of Source, and that would come into alignment with our sun and the central sun of Earth. In this case, it's the black sun on their side, our sun on our side, and the central sun within Earth, in the alternate Earth, and also with Source, and there is no more dark Source. However, they had put, before their demise, they had put a lot of measures in place to ensure that tonight was going to be topsy-turvy, for sure. And that, they were trying to aid the deep state with access to AI systems and things of that nature over the course of the last several days in preparation for the big event, which was due tonight. So, Is that going to actually take place? Well, no. Over the course of the last week, working feverishly day in and day out, the overlays on our electronics and our overlays on our persons have definitely changed the way our interaction with computers happens, which is good. But you're also seeing glitches in things, like maybe you downloaded an app on your phone and it's not there anymore. And then 20 minutes later, you go back and there it is. So as the adjustments started taking place over the last week or so, you may have felt strange energies coming from and through your computers because the deep state is trying to affect you in that way, since affecting you naturally or the way they used to was not really possible. Now, the Ruinins, due to their space-time continuum grids that existed within your person, did have some influence, but the stronger source gets, and the more that source rhythm, natural rhythm, is restored, the less influence they've been having. Sure, they can cause some disruptions, some draining, some energy, oddity feelings, but mostly through your shadow self on the other side. And, it's been affecting a lot of people for about a week or two now. And I would say it would have been a lot worse, had we come to this point without intervention, for sure. But, Source is good and God is good. And I can tell you everything happens in exactly the right time. And I know, you're going to say, oh, terrible things have happened in my life. And maybe we don't always understand those things and why they take place. But for me, regardless of how difficult my life has been from time to time, he always is there. He always shows up. He always helps me through these situations that I've been in. And trust me when I tell you, there are situations that I should not have made it out of alive. And I did. And that's because of the wisdom and all of the things Source affords me. And he affords all those things to you too. You just have to listen. When the intuition tells you to do something or not to do something, it's kind of hard to trust yourself, first of all. There's that self-doubt that comes in, and most of it's artificial. But it's kind of hard to say, okay, I have to do this really strange thing. But maybe that strange thing leads you to the love of your life, or maybe it leads you to a wonderful home. Maybe it leads you to a happier job. You just never know. It could just be as simple as forgetting your keys or, losing your keys. And for me, sometimes it gets really, really strong when it's needed. And for the last week or so, it's been really, really, really strong. So there's always an opportunity to talk to Source, and you just have to listen. Sometimes it's that quiet little voice, and it's got to make it all the way through all of the interference that we've had. Due to the Ruinins and their objectives, we've also had many governors on our bodies and our systems and our mind. Our minds are trained to degrade as we get older. Now, why is that the case? It is the case because as the longer you stay on this planet, the more wisdom you obtain. You have a lot of life experience you can share with a lot of people. That is not good in their mind. You might learn a thing or two by listening to your elders, and they don't want you to have those connections. And then what happens if you're in tip-top shape, knowing all the things you know at 200 years old or 300 years old? Can you imagine, with a straight Source connection and all of your experience, can you imagine how this world would change? Well, they had to make sure that that doesn't happen. They also change our bodies. They created the aging process. They definitely you know, have worked their magic, let's just say, on all of humanity for a long, long time. As far as this time loop is concerned, we're coming to that alignment and have come to that alignment in that head, so to speak, where everything is in alignment. But it's also, we took this as a perfect opportunity to ensure that we are not going to have an issue with this anymore. So we locked the door, we closed the door behind us. We worked feverishly so I could hurry up and get to this report to ensure there was no more connections through the megastructure space station moons, as you call them, or artificial moons, to that side of the omniverse. We made sure that there wasn't going to be a harvest today. And I'm sorry that the deep state is very disappointed. And by disappointed, I would say we have a lot of people yelling and screaming and jumping around. And, you know, they had all their black magic workers working away, you know, especially on me. They like that. You know, it doesn't bother me anymore. You know, they're just people, you know. And I'm kind of used to this stuff. But as we go through this change, meaning the overlays that were created by them dissipate, you might start to see the world in a whole new way. You might start to see that you have a little more self-confidence, that little voice of doubt that always whispers, you know, in your ear, so to speak, when you want to start a new project or you want to make a change in your life. You know, the one that tells you that you're not beautiful or you're not handsome, and, you know, when you look in the mirror. And I can tell you that everyone is beautiful to someone. You know, that beauty, it comes from within, and that handsomeness, I don't want to offend you guys out there listening, comes from within, you know, as the light of source shows through you. Don't let it talk to you. It's struggling right now. And for the last couple of days, it's really been pushing very hard. And I would say most recently since about Thursday. If you've been struggling and you're having a little bit of a tough time, you're on edge, you're antsy, you're angry, you're quick to be fly off the handle, so to speak, all of these things, maybe even some depression, depending on, you know, your current state. This thing has been pushing it to the limit. So be kind to yourself. Take care of yourself. For the next couple of days, it's going to be a little, you know, it could be a little touchy. I'm hoping after about 24 hours from now, we'll start to see the downslide of the transition and the change. Things typically take about 72 hours once power has been pulled for it to dissipate completely. So we've done a lot of work, not only today, but all weekend long. You know, their blood moon situation didn't work out the way they wanted it to either. You know, and that's kind of created that downhill spiral where, you know, now all of these other groups think they can do a better job when, quite frankly, everything I just explained to you is only the tip of the iceberg. And these people don't even understand that much, or they try to find a way to use it against us in some way. But I can assure you they will not be contacting any Ruinins anymore, and they won't be reaching out to them. Now, these beings, when they work through you, it's that little voice. For the deep state, it's instruction sets. You know, this is what you need to do. This is how it works. You know, this is how a harvest works, and you're here for the harvest time. And as the slaves that work in the field of the harvest, you get to enjoy some of the fruits of your labor. That's all not true. You know, half of these people are walking around saying that they're the children of Jesus these days. I've heard that one too. You know, oh, I am the son of Mother Mary. You know, oh, good Lord, help us all. You know, moving forward without them is going to be very beneficial for all of us. We just have to ensure that they can't do anything to harm us along the way. As far as other folks, we have been getting calls, or, Tom Melville mostly gets those calls. But he gets a lot of calls about, well, we'll contact you next week. Make sure you're available on your phone next week, meaning this week. We're going to all be reaching out this week. Well, the only reason why they're going to be reaching out this week, unbeknownst to themselves, is because their boss is trying to create a harvest in which there are no humans left on this planet constantly and consistently for the last several days. Do they know that? No. They're also, on the flip side, though, I will say, there is definitely a mutiny going on, and Langley 5 is trying to hold it all together. They're trying to get everybody underneath their umbrella because, they're comrades and everybody respects those people. Well, I can honestly say not everybody respects those people, because I could care less if they fell off the face of the earth tomorrow, and I think all of you would agree with me. The fact that these are some pretty evil people. Langley 5 is also convinced the Pentagon top generals that they are the gods of war. Heard that on a conference call. That was interesting. I'm like, first I met somebody who all of a sudden thinks he's the Lord of War, and apparently they're now the gods of war, and they're going to be the gods of war straight from Red Mountain, Alabama. Well, that's not going to work out either. As for us, I think that this 999 could bring about a really positive change without disruptions in the source signal, the alignment with Earth's central sun, the reconnection with our solar system, and the disconnection of the artificial version that has drained us for 250,000 years. I think we're going to come out smelling like a rose. Might happen by Wednesday, might take till Thursday, could be till the end of the week. But honestly, 250,000 years worth of pain, wars, and history, couple more days, we can do this. On that note, that has been the GIA report for the 8th of September, 2025. Well, for some of you, this is the 9th of September, so welcome to the 999 change and completion, hopefully in our favor. Have a wonderful night, and I will see you later on this week.